Hey guys, this is Jordan Connect here, and welcome to another episode of Embrace the Chase. And I'm pumped up because today is episode 42, and we have a Dr. Matt, and I want to make sure I'm saying your last name. It's Motil, right?
Motil. Yep.
Motil, perfect. I've been following his stuff for a while now. He is incredible when it comes to real estate. So for those of you that do not know who he is, he's actually the author of Man on Fire, which is an incredible book. I'm going to link that down in the description below after the live so you guys can buy it. Awesome stuff. He's also the founder of the Marie Paul Company, but he's a real estate expert. He has a great podcast. You guys should tune in live when he does it live or catch the replays. I'll link that down below as well. He's the host of it's called the Cash Flow King podcast. Great stuff. Dr. Motil, I'm so pumped to have you on. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's great to finally connect and do the show and stuff like that. So I appreciate you having me.
Of course, I absolutely love it. So a lot of my viewers haven't been exposed to your content just yet. So if you could do us a favor and start from the very beginning, what led you to obviously get your doctorate, but more importantly, what led you to real estate? Because your tagline on your Facebook's hilarious. It says you used real estate to quit your shitty job. So I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. So I I grew up. I'm almost 38 years old. So I grew up. I'm a legit. What do they call them now? It's like a zennial or something. Is that what they're calling my like micro generation of 1979 to 1984? So like 84 and on is a millennial. So we used to be Gen Y, and now we're called Zennials or something like that. But anyway, so the cool thing is, like they said, we grew up analog, and then we became digital. Is my generation, because the internet didn't exist, until I was really in high school. But so anyway, I think my generation grew up on the back end of the baby boomers, and we were shuffled into the college system, like herded like cattle through the front doors of college. So if you had, there was three classes of people that were capable, college material, so to speak, people that should go into the trades, and then people that were basically told go to the military. That was it. Those were like the three categories of people that you fell into if you grew up kind of around the time that I did. And so I went to college. It wasn't really an option. My parents were basically like, pick what you want to study and then go to school. And so my dad was in engineering. I was good in math and science. So they basically said, hey, go, be an engineer. And I enjoyed it. So I was like, hey, all right, I'll do that. And while I was in school, got kind of the entrepreneurial bug and started doing a little bit of real estate stuff while I was in college, and started reading everything I could. Rich Dad Poor Dad came out not too long before I went to college, and so I read that while I was a college student. It kind of changed my mindset and blew my mind a little bit. I didn't really know how to get into real estate, but I figured the answer was, which now I know is not the case, but the answer was, okay, go get a good job so you can make good money so that you can leverage that income to go buy real estate. And so I thought, all right, I need to finish my degree. I need to go get that job. And so I can go out there and do the real estate thing. So I just started reading as much as I could. I got, back then cassette tapes still existed. We had CDs obviously, but cassettes, you like had the dual bit, in the car. And so like I would be cruising around construction sites when I got out of college and listening to like Robert Kiyosaki cassettes on doing that. I also did some stuff in day trading at the time. And within the first year of me getting out of college, I flipped my first house and just kind of got the bug, and I did it as a side hustle all along. And looking back on it, my parents had bought a house when my brother and I were college students, and then they moved away. And so I kind of ended up managing that. So I kind of did the property management thing a little bit without really knowing. I fell into doing property rentals as just I was leaving the Phoenix market when the market tanked. And so I couldn't sell my house. So I turned it into a rental property out of necessity. That ended poorly, lost it all when the market crashed in 2008. And then ended up getting divorced a few years later from my first wife, and ended up again out of necessity needing to rent my house out because I couldn't afford my mortgage payment and child support and alimony and all that kind of stuff. And so kind of fell back into the rental game again. And then this time thought, all right, if I'm going to do it again, I'm going to make it work this time, and I'm going to need to figure it out. And so it really kind of went from there, where the more I did it, the more I was like, all right, I really like this. I'm into it. I've been, I was flipping houses as kind of like a side hustle for years. And, they say that like when people finally get to know you or get to know your story and your story finally gets out there, people are like, man, you blew up overnight. And in the last 12 months, I've gotten that so much where people go, man, I didn't even know who you were 12 months ago. And now you're everywhere. You blew up overnight. And I'm like, yep. And then I posted not too long ago, I posted a picture on Facebook and I was like, this was the first house I flipped. And then it's actually got like the time and date stamp on the photo. And it was 2003. And I'm like, yep, overnight success, only took me 13 or 14 years to get there. But that was kind of the deal. I grew up in the construction industry. I got an engineering degree, ended up into construction, thought I wanted to be an attorney for a minute, went to law school, got cancer, dropped out of law school, and then ultimately decided I really thought I wanted to teach. And so that was kind of how I ended up back in school again to get my doctorate, and did that. I taught higher education for a while until I realized that all I really was doing was perpetuating the bullshit of creating really good employees for middle class management. And I was like, you know what? This isn't what I'm about, because at this point I had already started my own business and I had quit my own job. And I was like, I can't stand up here anymore and continue to create good middle managers when I've, and what we started to teach was we started to teach classes, and I didn't personally do this, but we started to offer classes both at the community college level and at the university level in entrepreneurship. And they were starting to be taught by people that had never started a business before. And I'm like, this is the most screwed up thought process, that you've got students who are paying lots and lots of money to come sit in class to be taught theory about starting a business from someone who's never actually started a business. And the reality for me was, when it came time for me and I said, all right, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to jump into entrepreneurship 100%. I have a PhD. I should be able to figure this out, right? Like, nobody should be better at starting a business than me. And when it came time to actually starting a company, I was completely lost. And I went, how does this happen? Like, I have a terminal degree in business. I know really good about like KPIs and metrics and all of it. Like, once you have an established company, I can come in and I can rock the shit out of that. But when it comes to doing a startup, it was like, I really didn't have that information. I was like, there's a huge disconnect here in that space. And, you mentioned the Man on Fire book, but I just wrote a chapter in this book called The Refractive Thinker. And it's, the whole theme of the book is entrepreneurship. And it's all written by PhDs. And so it's a very academic, like, leaning text. But the interesting thing is, my whole spin on the chapter is basically kind of like perpetuating the bullshit. And so, and some of the other authors in here everyone has a PhD, but some of the other chapters are kind of very similarly tilted towards of like, are we really teaching the right things in higher ed? Do we need to shake up the higher education system? So it's a cool book, but it is definitely more academically driven than, my other one.
It's so true though, because my undergrad is in entrepreneurship, and my master's is in entrepreneurship, and I didn't really learn how to start a business from either of those. So you're dead on. It was basically just, hey, these are the skill sets to run a small business, which is nothing more than exactly how you hit the nail on the head. Middle management. It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Right. So then if you could kind of talk a little bit more about your other book, Man on Fire.
Sure. Well, everything I kind of talked about of like, I felt like I had a ton of momentum as a college student.
Sure.
And then when I left industry and when I left college and started out in industry, it was like, you're on this upward trajectory, and it was like, and and then so it was really kind of like I had all this momentum, I lost it all. How do I get it back? And then I really spent all these years in industry trying to find that momentum that I felt like I had as a college student. And it wasn't until I ultimately quit my job and started my own venture that I got all that momentum back. And so everything I talked about with like going to school, going to law school, getting cancer, the real estate, stuff, it's all in there. It just really is kind of like my story of how I tried to figure it out. There's lots of really good life lessons in there and kind of like little gold nuggets of, hey, looking back on it years later, here's what I kind of learned and took away from it. Um, and then for anybody interested in real estate, obviously that was my path to being able to get out of what I call a middle class trap.
So then, what would you say is one tip for somebody who wants to get into real estate? Because I know there's a lot of information out there, other than obviously, guys, follow his podcast. But other than like wholesaling, is there anything that somebody could do right now if they don't actually have a bunch of capital?
Yeah, I would say that probably the best thing to do is get a mentor, somebody that you feel like you can trust who, there's there's people out there that are putting out free content, right? And then there's people out there that are going to be like, hey, pay me $30,000 a year and I will take you under my wing and teach you everything you need to know about real estate. So, and then there's everything in between, right? Um, if you don't have any money, you want to get into real estate, probably wholesaling is definitely one of the easiest ways to do it. Um, you have to check out the legality of it in your specific state. I'll just make that disclaimer because some states are really coming down hard on the whole wholesaling concept. Um, it's always going to be legal to sell a contract, right? Like they can never make that illegal, but it's just the marketing of the real estate where people get themselves into trouble with wholesaling. But that's how I got started. I started flipping houses that I would purchase and then live in because I didn't know any better. But when I really started getting serious about real estate investing, I started wholesaling because you literally can do it with no money. Um, and it's kind of a cool story. And I've told this a number of times before, but I literally when I wholesaled my first deal, I had $300 to my name, period. Like that was it. I was completely out of money. I had $300 in my checking account, and it was kind of like, well, what am I gonna do? I got kids. I'm married, and I need I need to figure something out. And it was just kind of like, well, all right, here we go. And uh, within 4 hours, I'm serious, I had over 20 grand in my bank account. And now I don't I wish I could tell you like that's how it just happens. Um, it's such a cool story because it's really true for me. Um, but it's not that easy and it doesn't always happen like that. Like so I made the very first weekend I decided I'm gonna wholesale real estate. I did 2 deals literally in like 4 hour period of time. I got paid the next day up front on the contracts, but then I didn't do another deal for like a month. So you know what I mean? It's like if you could do 20 grand in 4 hours and you could like literally do that 40 hours a week, like, everyone would be wholesaling real estate. The reality is most people aren't doing 10K deals, and most people are thrilled if they're doing a deal a month if they're in the wholesale space. So it is hard. It's hard to get going, but you can do it without any money. That's probably the easiest thing. But find somebody that you can latch onto as a mentor. And mentor doesn't necessarily mean you have to actually have a physical relationship with that person. Like I have a podcast that's free. I feel like there's good content out there. I can be a mentor to you. You and I don't actually have to ever even interact, right? Robert Kiyosaki, in my opinion, was a really good mentor to me. The Rich Dad Poor Dad guy. I've never met him in person. He probably has no idea who I am. I'd like to think maybe he does at this point, but I'm sure he doesn't. Um, but really, honestly, so he's been a big mentor to me. And if I ever got a chance to meet him in person, I'd tell him like, "Hey, you've been really influential." Like I'm sure he's been to hundreds of other real estate investors. But find a good mentor that you can learn. Really, all the information's out there. It's just a matter of compiling it and then using it and taking action.
It's true. It's very true. It's great advice. So then if we could transition kind of into current projects. So if you could talk about your podcast or anything else that you're going to be doing into 2018 that people can be involved with.
Sure. So a couple things. I have a book, the second book that I've been kind of writing and then kind of like putting off and stuff like that. The title is actually called "Fuck Your 9 to 5." I don't know if I can swear on your show. I'm
You're
sorry.
fine.
So it's called "Fuck Your 9 to 5," and it's basically more along the lines of it's actually real estate, but it's really towards that target audience of, my personal goal is I want to help 100,000 people quit their jobs through real estate investing. So that's my goal. It's a big goal. I have no idea how that's going to go. And I feel like that makes it a good goal because obviously if I had a plan, I was like, well, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, then your goal's not big enough, right? So I want to help 100,000 people quit their jobs on the backs of investing in real estate in one way or another. So I want to put out another book, really geared towards, I want to have it be like a fiction book. Like I want to have characters. And so as you read it and you're like ingrained in the actual characters of the book, you learn. I think that'd be kind of a cool way to write it. It's much more difficult to write a book like that than it is the way that I wrote this one, and even the other one. So that's why it's taking me a long time. I'm working on a couple courses that I'm going to just give out for free or give out like super, super cheap. Because I kind of say the same stuff over and over again. That was really why I started the podcast, the Cash Flow King one, was because I would get on the call with people and kind of like help them get started in real estate. And I was like, man, I'm saying the same stuff over and over and over again. And then I was like, well, if I had a podcast, I could just be like, well, go listen to episode 3 or go listen to episode 12 or that kind of thing. And so a lot of the episodes of the podcast have really just been kind of like, well, I'm tired of saying that. So I'm just going to go make that as an episode, that kind of thing. And it's evolved from there. And I wanted to start a new show called The American Entrepreneur, which is actually out on iTunes right now, but there's only like 3 or 4 episodes. And that really is just more entrepreneurial based because the Cash Flow King is really, it is a real estate niche show based on like income producing property. That's kind of the idea. And so I want to do something that's more entrepreneurial driven that I can do kind of like an interview show just to talk about like, who's out there, what are they doing? Who should you know? How'd you get started? That kind of thing. Just because I want to network with people too. And I think that's a good way to do it. And then ultimately, just to be perfectly transparent, it's a great way to get yourself out there as well. It's because if people know who my guests are, then they're going to be like, well, who's the asshole who's interviewing them? And then, then they end up on their website, and then I can pixel them, and then I can run ads to them.
It's true. It's true.
So full transparency.
No, I love it. It's very accurate. I love it. So then, do you do real estate all throughout the United States, globally, or are you just mainly in Ohio?
Predominantly just in Northeast Ohio. So, I'm on the west side of Cleveland. So we have a real estate portfolio here. First and foremost, we are a real estate investing company. So we buy and hold investment property. So we have a portfolio that we own and manage ourselves. We have tenants that pay us rent every month. So we actually practice what we preach. I don't have any money in the stock market. I don't have any money in cryptocurrency. I'm 100% in real estate because, one, I feel like there's huge bubbles in both of those things. And then two, I really kind of feel like that's, if I'm out there preaching, carrying the banner, so to speak, of cash flowing real estate, like that's where I need to be, putting my own money. We help other people get into deals if it makes sense. We did more, earlier this year, it was really kind of a, hey, we'll help you get into the game if you've never owned a rental property before. We've really gotten away from that. I would say mid-year, we really stopped doing that almost completely just because if you have no experience and you don't understand what's involved in owning rental property, you can have very unrealistic expectations as to how that's supposed to go. So unless you're educated on it, which I was when I got into it, and really the thing was I did it, like I said, out of necessity. When I got divorced, I was kind of forced back into turning my primary residence into a rental, and I learned like, okay, this is how you be a landlord, kind of on the fly, and I don't hate it. Um, But if people go into it with the wrong expectations, then you can become very unhappy with it, and that's not really what I'm trying to do. So what we really did was when we transitioned away from helping people get started, it was like, hey, you really want the passive income piece. 99% of the people that get on the phone with me are attracted to me from the message of, hey, I fired my boss, and now I do my own thing. And they're like, yeah, I want to do that too. So I ask them why real estate, and they're like, well, I want the passive income. They don't really want to own a rental property. They really want, like in anything in sales, right? I don't really want the drill. I want the hole. I want the end result. And so what we've done is we've kind of transitioned our business this year to say, look, you want the passive income piece? Great. I want the assets. So you lend me money as the bank, I'll pay you an interest rate that you can't get pretty much anywhere else other than secured by real estate. And it's a win-win. So you make the passive income piece. You don't have to worry about the active side of owning the real estate, managing the real estate, dealing with the tenants, all that kind of stuff. And then we stabilize the property. This is what we do full time. It's not a side gig for us. It's not a distraction from everything else we have going on. And it's a win-win. And then at some point in time, we restructure the debt, typically with a conventional bank, which then frees up their money to do more deals on the front end. And then we then create the bigger passive income piece for ourselves in the back end. So it's kind of, that's our model of what we're doing now. And it's working out really nicely.
That's really interesting. You kind of just answered my next question. If you could maybe explain a little bit further, but I was going to ask you if you guys also did hard money lending or joint ventures, but it almost sounds like you're having other people be the hard money lenders to you, if I'm understanding that correctly.
A little bit. Hard money is different than private money. So in my experience, a hard money lender is like a professional, almost like loan shark, right?
Sure.
So these people are out there in business to make money, and they're looking at like upfront points. They're very high interest rates. Typically, they're very short-term loans. I I look at that as flip funding. So like if you're going to go flip a house and you're going to be in and out in 90 days or 6 months or less, you can afford to pay lots of money for the money because typically you're going to make a decent money on the back end. So you can afford that. If you're buying rental property and you're using hard money, you have to be very careful because if you don't have your exit strategy in place as to how you're going to restructure that debt in a short period of time, you can wind up with a property that's upside down cash flow wise. And now you're like, okay, I can't get a loan, or I can't raise my own private funds, or I don't have enough money in my own bank account to pay this person back. And then now you're in a situation where you're either selling the property, you're basically forced to flip it, or you're handing the keys over to the lender saying, hey, I can't pay you back and I can't sell it. So here you go. Here's the deed to the property, which is called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. The lender does not want your property, and that will ruin your relationship with a hard money lender faster than you can, say hard money. But private lending is really what we do from the standpoint of we're working with people that have money, that a lot of them have money in retirement funds that didn't really know that they could invest in real estate with retirement money. A perfect example is somebody who, let's say they worked for 10 years at company A, they had a 401k, they went to go work for company B, they never did anything with their 401k at company A. And so company A the plan administrator for the 401k takes the money and moves it into a cash holding account within the retirement account. So it's still in retirement, but it's like earning nothing. And then you could roll it over to like a traditional IRA. And so what we always recommend to people is, hey, roll it into what's called a self-directed IRA, and then you can invest that in anything you want. It has to be self-contained for retirement rules, for the IRS rules, but you can invest in people's businesses. You can invest in real estate. You can actually have your retirement fund buy property itself. Like my wife is just bought a condo in her IRA, and we're Airbnb-ing it, and so she's making a killing in her retirement account right now because we have a condo on Airbnb that her retirement fund actually owns.
So then where does the income go? Does it have to go back into the
It
retirement?
has to go back into the retirement account. If you pull it out, it's the same thing as taking a distribution from your IRA or your 401k.
Is there a cap, like 5,500 a year or something?
It's 5,500 a year for new money. So like if I wanted to take money from my own income and I wanted to add it to the self-directed IRA, it's the same IRA rules as if I had it over at Fidelity or TD Waterhouse or anybody like that. So it's capped at 5,500 of new money, but there's no cap on how much can it grow. So I can become a private money lender with my self-directed IRA, and we could joint venture with somebody who's flipping houses. Okay. So let's say you said, hey, Matt, I want to flip houses. I got this great deal. Let me pitch it to you. And I go, hey, it looks great. Why don't we do this? I'll fund it 100%. You do all the work. I'll coach you on the process because I've flipped a dozen houses last year, so I know what's up. And we'll split the profit 50-50. Well, if I fund it 100% through my IRA, and then let's say at the end of the day, just for easy math, we make 100K together. 50 is going to go to you. 50 is going to go to my IRA. So I get all my money back from the original investment, goes back into the IRA. The 50K that I made on the profit side goes back into my IRA. And you pay 50% pretty much capital gains taxes, 40% capital gains taxes on your 50K. I pay zero because it's in my retirement account.
Huh. My mind is blown.
Yeah, so it's an interesting strategy. What we ended up doing, I mean, if you like that, wait for this one. So what we ended up doing was, in my company, I hired I have 5 kids. So all of my kids are models. So and we'll put out we'll market a property and be like, hey, and my kids are there like holding signs like buy me. Well, we pay them at a modeling fee, and then we were able to open retirement funds within the company, and the company can match it. So we pay them a salary, and then we can invest their incomes into retirement funds, and then my kids can actually go and they can partner together to buy rental properties and I've got like my youngest son that just turned 1, and he is a part owner of a rental property, and he's making like 15% on his property. And then one of my mentors, obviously this was his idea. I didn't come up with this all on my own, but his son is 2, and he has a 6-figure IRA already, and he flip funds people's flips in his son's IRA, and he's making triple-digit returns every year on his kids' IRA, basically using the same strategy. So it's really cool. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it is a retirement vehicle, so you cannot touch it until you're 59 and a half, just like a normal IRA. But you can also private lend out of it. So you can be what's called a note investor, where you would have, a promissory note and a mortgage as if you were the bank. And that's what we are doing with a lot of people is they will come in and they invest the money with us. We pay them a really nice return. And then every month we write a check to their self-directed administrator for their interest payment, and it goes right back into the retirement account.
It's the second time you've blown my mind, but so it's almost like a family operating company, if I'm understanding this properly. So couldn't you, in theory, also pay your child a reasonable salary when they get old enough to, let's say, go to college, but your business is able to write that expense off as a tax expense because they're just taking that money that they made as a salary and paying their tuition, correct?
Yes.
I didn't even. That
Yeah.
alone blows my mind. But the fact that you're telling me that your
Yeah.
1-year-old is a part owner in real estate, you're just good lord. How do I partner with you
Yeah.
again?
Now
Go to your website.
there are, yeah, drmattmotil.com. You can, but see, here's the thing. So there are some rules with how you can like move money in a self-directed fund. If you think of a family tree, you can't go vertical and you can't go horizontal. So, but you can go diagonal. So like I cannot buy or sell something to my own like business. So I can't take my own self-directed account and then fund a deal where I'm going to be the owner of it. Like
Gotcha.
that's it. That like that's against the IRS rules. They say no, you can't do that. So I can't buy and sell stuff to myself. I can't do it with I can't do it for my spouse. My parents couldn't do it for me. So like you can't go vertical on the family tree, but like my uncle could fund deals for me. Like my dad's brother, if he had one, could fund things for me. I could fund stuff for a niece or a nephew. So like you can go diagonal that way, but you can't go vertical. So like my grandparents, if they were still alive, if they had self-directed accounts, they couldn't fund things for me. Um, so it gets a little interesting as to like, okay, you got to play within the rules, obviously. Um, but but can all five of my kids come together and own a 20% share in a property? As if I bought if they bought a property, let's say, for easy math, it's $40,000 because you can put $5,000 into it every year. And so each of my kids contributes 5,000 to their self-directed IRA in year one. They each then go and buy a 20% share in the real estate asset. They close it, and they all then are partners together. And then when the rent check comes in, it's divided up into 5 segments and then paid out to the plan administrator, who then puts the money into their retirement fund.
You've just
So,
blown my mind. Have you ever read books by Mark Kohler?
mm-mm.
I'll send them over to you. He was I went to a conference called Thrive about 3 months ago. He's a CPA and a lawyer, and he's where I first heard about family operating accounts, or excuse me, businesses. But what you just said took that a whole step further and has blown my mind. So that's
Yeah, and
great.
it just scratches the surface too, because you can really get into like when you start doing a family-owned business, you can get into solo 401ks, you can get into life insurance plans. Like I've got a very big life insurance plan. We just set up like a whole very elaborate like trust system that owns the businesses and the assets and the real estate and all this kind of stuff. Like what happens if we die, that kind of thing. Um, but there's all kinds of different vehicles out there to defer tax, to shelter tax, to then grow money tax free, that then can be used at very, very low interest rates, almost like infinite banking within life insurance, which I always thought was a big scam until I finally met somebody who explained it to me the right way. And then I was like, man, I can't buy enough of this stuff. Like, it takes a while to get it to the point where it's built up to where it's actually got something of tangible value. But, you know, probably about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years after you really get the thing going, it can really be a massive instrument to take down some really nice deals and do that kind of stuff. And then the money that you borrow is borrowed against your like death benefit. So like if you never pay it back, it really doesn't affect anything overall. It just reduces the death benefit, and as long as your death benefit's big enough, then your family's still cool. But like my plan personally is when that gets to be a couple more years, it'll be to the point where I'll be able to fund down payments for entire apartment buildings. Like I'll go to a bank and say, hey, lend me 75% of the purchase of this $4 million building. I've got $1 million cash value in my life insurance. I'm going to use this and borrow it at 3%. And all it really does is if I never pay it back, it just reduces the death benefit on my life insurance policy. But I'll be able to pull from that, use that, and then if it's a value add apartment building, the play there is come in, restructure, structure the property, stabilize it, raise the rents, increase the value, go back to the bank. And a $4 million building is now worth, let's say, 6. They give you a new 75% loan. I've got my $1 million back. I put it back into my life insurance plan and I can do it all over again. So that's kind of the idea of how, when they say it takes money to make money, to a certain extent, there is some truth to that. But the thing is, you can start to see how once you get the snowball rolling of building wealth, it really can get big fast. And it's pretty exciting to get that momentum going because it really can take off in a hurry.
That's just wild. Man, I can get you to talk about this for hours, but I do want to respect your time. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the last question I ask everybody on the show, and that is there anything on your heart or on your mind right now that you want people to know about? And that can either be about you or a specific cause.
Man, that's a good question. It always seems like this time every year, with it being around the holidays and stuff like that, I do like major soul searching as to like how'd the year go, what do I want to have happen the next year moving forward, and all this and all that. And it's always an interesting time because it gets a little emotional about like celebrating the wins, licking the wounds a little bit, and just kind of feeling how things kind of went and are you happy overall or not, and you start to make those resolutions of 2018 is going to be the year that I actually, stick it out at the gym all year. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned this year that's kind of on my heart right now is like the world is a very small place, and with the advent of the internet, it's gotten much much smaller. And there are good people out there, and when you meet those people, when you can interact with those people, it renews my sense of humanity that those people exist still in the world. But there's people out there that are trying to get you just for the sake of getting you too. And so it's sad because you kind of go, can I trust anybody? Is there anybody out there that's really got your back at the end of the day? So it just makes it tough. But yeah.
I love it. Great stuff. Well, appreciate you so much being on. Would love to have you on again in a couple months to kind of see where things are going for 2018 for you. But for those of you watching live or watching the replay, please check him out down below. I'm going to have all the links there here in about 5 minutes. Go to his website, watch the podcast, and buy the daggone book because you're going to absolutely love it. But really appreciate you being on, sir. Anything else you'd like to say before I close this up for today?
No, we give the book away for free. You can get a copy of it at manonfirebook.com. And then the best way to reach out is just go to the website, drmotil.com.
I love it. Appreciate it. We'll see you.
Yeah. Thank you.